The Story of the Golden Goose. Once upon a time, there was a woodcutter called Dummling, a dreamy, foolish-looking lad, though he was good-hearted. One day, his father sent him to a distant wood to chop down trees. Dummling thought that these trees were a kind he'd never seen before, and it was hard work trying to hack through their hard trunks. Drenched in sweat after all his efforts, he had barely sat down against a freshly hewn trunk to have a meal, when a strange old man with a white beard popped out from behind a bush and asked him for a bite to eat. Kindly, Dummling gave him some bread and cheese, and together they cheerily drank a flask of wine.
"Of all the woodcutters that have tried to cut down these trees, you're the first one who has been nice to me,"
said the old man, stumbling over his words, perhaps from drinking all that wine.
"You deserve a reward. If you cut down that tree in the center of the wood, you'll find that in its roots there's a gift for you. You see, I'm the wizard of the woods."
Dummling did as he was told, and in a flash his work was done. Within the roots of the tree which the wizard had pointed toward, he found a golden goose. Slipping the bird under his arm, Dummling set off toward home. But on the way, Dummling got lost. In the dead of night, he reached a strange village. A tavern was still open, so Dummling went in.
"Something to eat for myself and for my golden goose,"
he ordered the innkeeper's daughter.
"That's a bite for me and a bite for you,"
he said, sharing his food with the goose across the table. The innkeeper's other two daughters came to stare at the strange sight. Then all three dared ask, "Why are you so kind to a goose?"
"This is a magic goose," replied
Dummling,
"and worth a fortune. I shall stay the night here, and I need a secure room, for I don't want to be robbed."
The innkeeper's oldest daughter gave him the key to the upstairs room, and taking the goose, Dummling went up to sleep. During the night, one of the sisters crept into the room to steal at least one golden goose feather. "If it's a magic bird, then one of its feathers will be precious too," she reasoned. But the moment her hand touched the feathers of the goose's tail, it stuck fast, and nothing would unstick it. In a loud whisper, she called to her sisters for help. But when they came and tried to pull her free, they too stuck fast. A little while later, Dummling awoke and saw the three sisters, ashamed at being discovered, stuck to the golden goose. "How can we get free?" they wailed.
"No idea,"
Dummling replied.
"But I have to leave with my goose. Too bad for you if you're stuck to her. You'll just have to come too."
And off he went. When the innkeeper saw the strange little procession trip past, he shouted to his daughters,
"What is the meaning of this?"
and grabbed his youngest daughter by the arm, who was last in line. It was the worst thing he could have done, for he too found himself attached to the tail of the little group. The same fate awaited a nosy village woman, the plump curate, and the baker who had placed a hand on the curate's shoulder just as Dummling rushed past. Last of all came a guard who had tried to stop the procession. The people of the village laughed as Dummling and his row of followers went by, and crowds soon gathered along the road to watch. Close to the village where Dummling had spent the night stood the royal palace. Though rich and powerful, the king had a great sorrow. His only daughter suffered from a strange illness that no doctor had been able to cure. And so she was always sad and unhappy. The king had once proclaimed that the man who succeeded in making his daughter laugh would be granted her hand in marriage. But so far, nobody had so much as brought a smile to the lips of the princess. It so happened that the princess chose that day to ride through the village square, just as Dummling, with the golden goose under his arm, solemnly marched by with his line of unwilling followers. When she heard the ruckus outside, the princess raised the carriage curtains. The minute she set eyes on the remarkable sight, she burst into peals of laughter. Everyone was amazed and delighted to hear the princess laugh for the first time in her life. She stepped down from her carriage for a closer look at the golden goose, and that's how she got stuck to the baker. Laughing and chattering, the procession headed toward the palace, with the crowd close at their heels. When the king saw his daughter in fits of laughter, he could hardly believe it.
"How miraculous! How marvelous!" he said.
But in spite of all the mirth, it was a serious situation. That is, until a strange old man with a white beard and a tall peaked hat stepped forward and snapped his fingers 3 times. Suddenly, Dummling and the others all became unstuck. Dummling was about to thank the Wizard of the Woods, for it could be none other, but he had vanished into thin air. And that's how the simple woodcutter Dummling found himself married to the king's daughter and lived happily ever after. The end.